Okay. Well, how did you find Halifax?
Oh, I really enjoyed my time in Halifax.
Isn't that a great city?
It is. It is. It helped a lot that my dad's older brother, my Uncle Brian, and my Aunt Isabella, my 3 cousins lived there. And
Did you visit?
every week? You know,
wow.
he was great. There was hardly a Sunday that went by that he didn't have me out for Sunday supper.
Well, in a city that large, coming from a community as small as Nelson is, it's nice to have that family touch.
It was. It
Because
really
it
was.
keeps you grounded,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, I suppose, you know, by the time you were 3 steps off the doorstep of this place, would he be calling up your mom and dad and giving a little report on you, or?
Maybe, I don't know. Very often, you know, when I got to his house, that was it was kind of, he wanted the report from Nelson. You know what I mean? Usually, you know, he'd say, "Oh, what's going on? What's going on back in Nelson?" And we'd sit or I'd stand in the kitchen because he cooked all the time, and I'd tell him all the news that I had from the last week.
So how frequently would you come back to Nelson?
I came back probably a little bit more often the first year.
Yeah.
Because the first year we were there too was also the year of the hurricane that came through and knocked power out and destroyed the city.
I was down when that hit too. Wasn't that
pretty wild?
come out of a bar and down on a main street, and I'm not going to say who was there, but
Right.
let's go in for a drink. You know, we were there for like, I don't know, 3 hours. We were watching TV on probably the Weather Channel, and you know, showing the radar. And this little it wasn't little. This circle was coming, and they're saying, "This is going to happen. This is going to happen." Yeah, another round here. We stumbled out. We stumbled out of the bar. And trash cans were flying. And we trying to stand up in this effing hurricane, and I had never been in a hurricane before, and I thought, oh yeah, just a little bit of wind, eh? We stayed too long, and I thought the house was going to explode. I thought we were going to lose all the windows, and I had a nephew there, and he was probably 3 or 4, and I made up my mind then. I sat in the kitchen, and I waited for the windows to either go out or come in. And I said, if this place implodes, I'm going to grab the child and go to the basement. The house was vibrating. Wow. It was insane.
Yeah.
Because she lived right on the south end of Halifax there.
Okay.
Boo.
Yes.
Wow. Anyway, yeah, that was... Yeah, I don't think we should have gone to the bar, to be honest. It was a little more dangerous than we took it for, but
Yeah.
I respected nature after that. It's a great city, and... did you have your own car, or did you go by train, or?
I went by train or sometimes by bus.
Okay.
But usually, like I say,
Yeah.
usually I come back all the time on the train because, like I say, they just go to Newcastle and hop on the train, and I'd be.
Train's
I'd
great.
be-
I took the train down there a number of times.
Yeah.
You know?
No.
Just bring a book. You don't got to worry about driving, and you know, there's not very times that the train gets in an accident, except for maybe in the 1930s
Yeah,
there
well,
in Rogersville.
There you go.
So a very
That's right.
safe way to travel.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it a lot. And I remember once, I think I must have been home for Remembrance Day, because Remembrance Day must have fallen on a Friday, so it gave me a long weekend.
Yeah.
And I remember, it was 2005, because it was the 60th anniversary at the end of the Second World War.
Oh,
and
yes.
the
Yes.
government had brought all the veterans to Ottawa for the national ceremony. And I remember every stop that we would have, because I was on the train coming back, and all these extra cars, and every stop that we had, there was a band, there was a reception for the veterans that were getting off at that stop.
What a great thing to see.
Yeah,
And back then there would have been a fair number that were still alive.
yeah.
Cool. So during the summer, when you're at university, you continued to be employed by Wilbur's Island, Friends of Wilbur's Island.
That's right. Yep.
Do you remember roughly when it was that you got into playing a character? You know?
Yeah, so that was 2002. It was my second summer there. So as I mentioned, my first summer wasn't bad. It was good, but I just thought, like I said, I was, this is the job. It was something that, it was good. It was close. But the next year, we were meeting with Parks Canada and they were kind of giving us interpretive training that first year, and before the year started, I guess. And I remember the fellow that was given to us was the name of Victor Savoy, and he was saying we should have some first-person, interpreters, some characters on the island. He said it would add a lot to it.
He's right, and he was right.
Yeah, he was. And it was funny, because I don't think I had said a word the entire time, the entire session. And he said, I think Shawn would be a good character. And I was like, whoa.
Well,
Where
I
did that
know
come
where you
from?
live.
So, yeah,
You didn't turn it down?
No, Joyce LeBlanc, who was the coordinator that year, come up with this idea of having William Davidson and somebody to kind of counterpoise William Davidson. And at first it was going to be a fisherman, but then it became a lumberjack, and that was kind of she called this lumberjack after her uncle, and that
Cletus?
Exactly, yeah. So and I got a little script, and I kind of moved some parts around and kind of embellished a few things and added a few, slipperier than a barrel of snots, and slides down the banister and all that. And
I remember that video.
yeah, exactly. So and then we did that character for a little while. In 2004, we expanded the cast a little bit more, and then expanded again in 2006 and in 2010, and eventually, like I say, it got to be what it is, currently.
Yeah.
With many characters and all sorts of different stories to be told.
So what year did you finish your BA in?
So I finished my BA in 2007, it was a great experience. I really enjoyed my time in Halifax, and my last year was very good. I had some really great professors, and it was all seminars that year. I even had a course at the public library, and it was all about Halifax and its role in the military. So it started in 1750, with the founding of the community, and then went right up to the present day.
Wow, that would be a great course.
It was fun. And what was funny about it, though, was there was a lady who wasn't, because again, part of the course was open to the public, and the rest, and then we do it kind of like the last hour was just for the students that had registered for it. So that's where you get all your assignments and such.
Yeah.
But one lady from the public, she wanted to she basically just audit the course, and talked to the professor. The professor said, sure, and as long as you do the work, that's fine. And she was the best student in the class, because every time we'd have an assignment, she knew all of these veterans, because she was a lady in the community, so she would have these papers with all these great interviews all through them, because she talked to all of her friends and acquaintances and whatever. So I remember she brought a lot to that class.
So now you have your BA from probably one of the most historic cities in Eastern Canada, that in St. John, and Miramichi has a long history. Hello, we exist here. So, you came from a community that had a long tradition of history, even before the Europeans showed up. So we've got a BA now, and what's the next step?
So I put in to go to UNB for my master's, and thinking that I would. I'd only ever applied to St. Mary's when I went for my undergrad, and I got in. And I only ever applied for my to UNB for my master's, and I got in. So I was lucky that way. I was, that in 1,000, as it were.
Lucky, I don't know if I put it that way. You got to have the marks and to get through into those courses, especially in masters. They don't just give that to any fool like me. They're not going to do that, John.
Well.
So
yes, that was my next step. So packed up my loot and went to Fredericton. Actually, after having my first summer, the summer 2007, the summer after I got my BA, was my first summer as the programming coordinator at Beaubears. So that was a fun experience. So that I was kind of a first among equals at that point to kind of look after programming and kind of schedule the other students and so on and so forth.
And you like that kind of management thing?
I mean, it was interesting, and and of course, like I say, I was working with a lot of people I knew from previous summers anyway, so it wasn't really hard.
Right.
But yeah.
Right.
And that was the first year too that we started doing kind of programming that wasn't the tour. And I was really, well, for lack of a better word, I'll say I was really proud of the group that I worked with, because they come up with the idea of the campfire, which I think is something that we've done, a number of years ever since.
Yeah.
They saw it on the CBC News where somebody was doing it down along the St. John River, and they said, well, we can do that here.
Absolutely.
So it was a great opportunity, and it was a really successful event, and it ended up being something that we did for a number of years afterward. And I was, like I said, I took a great deal of pride in the fact that was something that kind of came from the bottom up, and not from me as a manager or from the board or whatever, but it was an idea that the staff come up with to do.
Have any funny stories from that time? Not to mention names now.
Oh, I mean, it was all quite fun for sure. I'd have to think. I remember, it wasn't that year, but it was probably a couple of years before, we were doing the tour, and the fellow that was playing Davidson, I heard him hooping and roaring and going on, and I didn't know what it was anyway, so I come out, and then I heard this big crash, and this big moose come running through the woods.
That'll scare the out of you.
Yeah,
When you have to look up at something going that fast, it's a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was quite a time. The guests miss out on it, but we characters, we got to see.
Yeah, they're a big animal.
Yeah,
So
enormous.
you did your MA.
Yep.
Then those years would be 2000.
2000, I guess, we started in September of 2008 or 2007, pardon me, and finished up in May of 2009.
So this is just when the world had a little financial crisis going on there, and this is a few years after Miramichi lost thousands of jobs. I mean, those mills, Boise, and of course Acadia, and the sawmill in Nelson, and Birchall's, and sawmill in Newcastle, the sawmill in Blackwell, for that matter, shut down, flatter than a pancake, stamped down with steel toe boots. And it was a very dark time.
Sure it was.
Yeah, a lot of people got impacted by that, and of course you know a bit about that. So you got your MA, and what? Why go for the PhD, or did you go into it right away, or did you wait a few years?
No, I went into it right away. I just figured that the way, as far as I had come now, I figured that the PhD was the next step, and that's what I would need in order to teach at a university level.
So the goal was to teach at university?
It was.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
I figured that was, that's what one does. I was disabused of that notion in the course of the next 8 years, but at the time that was my plan, and at that point I had applied, I think, to 4 different universities.
So when you apply for a PhD, do you have to submit material as an example of what you did, or?
Exactly.
Yeah?
Yeah. So you submit your transcripts, you submit, as I recall, like a sample of writing and some other things, and like a proposal of what you would want to do, there. So like I
So
said,
the
just to kind of-
PhD, is it totally original research, or is it based on what's already known and you take it a step further, or what is it exactly?
I think it can be either or. I think if you can do something that nobody's ever done before, that's great. But I think a lot of people just, and I think that's kind of the goal, is to kind of take a new slant on something, or look at it from a way that maybe it hasn't been looked at before.
And it's pretty independent research.
Yes.
I take it.
Yes, it is.
I mean, you have an advisor, I would assume, but if you're going to make or break it, it's going to be entirely on your shoulders.
Yes.
That's it.
Yep.
And are they expensive? Is the PhD expensive?
It is a very expensive degree.
So it's quite a gamble to say, I'm going to go and I'm going to spend this money, and I'm going to come out the other end with something worth having, with a goal to make a living down the road.
Mhm.
That's a huge gamble. Wow.
Yeah. And
So
you
you-
know, especially I think as you kind of once you get in there, you start to find out some truths about this whole thing, and you know you realize. I think they told us in my third year that you know the U of T, one university, can put out enough history PhDs every year to fill every vacancy in the whole country. You know.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So you know, I mean, it's
Oh,
it's
my.
you know, I think once you get there, you start to realize, you know, yeah, you know, it is it's a gamble for sure, and it's also like I say, I mean, you know, you have to think kind of broadly about what this degree can do for you, and it's not necessarily just you know, a university teaching position that you have to aim at because
Holy
again,
moly.
there's so much competition out there.
Wow. So it was a Western
Yes, it was.
university in Ontario?
Yep.
And that took you how long to do that?
So that was, I guess it was from September of '09 to January of '17.
Okay. Wow. And were you able to work full time at the Beaubears Island Center, or did you have to go in stages, do this or do this? How did that work out?
So you started my first 4 years there. I was working for the university while I was doing the studies and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I was a TA, so I'd run tutorials for one of the history classes for a number of years, and then I was I marked for a while, and
This was at Western itself?
Yep.
Which is located in which
London.
London, Ontario.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, Southern Ontario is where the game is.
Yeah.
That's where the population is.
absolutely. And yeah, so you know you have Western there, and then you have the affiliate colleges all around Western. So you have Huron University College, Brescia, King's University College, St. Peter's Seminary. There's like you know 3 or 4 that are just around it.
Almost like Halifax on a larger scale.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right. So
Were you making enough to get by? Were you making enough to do what you wanted to do, or pay for this PhD?
yes, for those first 4 years. But it helped a lot that I could go home every summer and do Beaubears, and that gave me a little bit of extra. And
Well,
that was
Sure. I would think mentally too would give you a bit of break from you know a high level of tension perhaps at university, and then come and back to your own community and be able to do things that you're already familiar with to start with. You know, it's not like you'd have to learn all over again every year, because a lot of the people you would already know from previous years.
No, absolutely. That it certainly was. I ended up having to spend the summer of 2012. I spent it in London in order to kind of keep pushing on the dissertation that I was doing at the time. So I missed out. I mean, I was home for probably maybe 4 or 5 weeks in the
Oh,
summer. You
okay.
know, for so I mean, I missed a lot of that opportunity to kind of decompress
Yeah,
at Beaubears.
Yeah, good word. That's a good word.
So yeah, so it was certainly noticeable in the course of my 4th year there. But yeah, and after 4 years, the employment, I guess, portion of my time there had come to an end, and I decided that I wasn't going to live in Southern Ontario without a job.
Pretty expensive.
Yeah. So I decided that I would come home, and figured, like I say, I mean, for a while I was a lecturer. Oh, thank you very much. I was a lecturer at the for UNB here at the community college. I taught.
They're extension courses?
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then I went back to Fredericton for a little while. I spent a year there, kind of hoping that being a little bit closer to a university library, I could again get some more work done. And then in 2015, I was able to get the executive director position at Beaubears when Wendy moved out west.
Right. So in 2015, you were still in effect finishing up your PhD.
I was still kind of in the throes of it. So in 2013, I guess, maybe the end of 2013, my supervisor, who I was working with, got a job elsewhere and had to leave the university. So that kind of threw a bit of a wrench into things.
So you had to start again with a new supervisor.
I did. I mean, I didn't have to start all over, but my new supervisor felt that the topic that I was working on at the time, was a little too broad, or would never be kind of finished. So he advised me to kind of start over with a new focus, take some of the information and carry it over, but then also bring in some new stuff. So that's, like I say, that's why I went to Fredericton for a while, to kind of make up for lost time. And then so throughout 2015-16, I was still kind of exchanging information and sending revisions and getting revisions back and so on and so forth. By the end of 2016, I was being advised that I had kind of gone as far as I was going to go, and that it was as ready as it was going to be in order to do the defense. So in January of 17, I packed off to London one more time, and we had the defense of the dissertation.
Is it anybody doing a dissertation at that level? I would think you would have to have a fair bit of nerves in you to even go through that.
It was a trying experience for sure. I mean, it was 3 hours in the room, and trying to answer the questions the best way that I could, and and then 45 minutes outside the room while they're talking about whether I'm
What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now if I don't get this?
But I mean, at the end of the day, I knew that what we were doing at Beaubears at that time was really important, and was really important to me. And so I knew that if it was a no, that I could live with that, if I had to. Luckily, it was not. Luckily, like I say, that they said that they were willing to pass me with some significant revisions, which I did over the next month. And by March, I had turned in my completed dissertation, and that May I received my diploma. So,
thank you, Lord.
Absolutely. So those were my exact words when they announced that I had passed my defense.
Good Catholic boy.
Indeed.
So when did you start to write your book, or was your book a child of your research that you were doing for your PhD?
No. In 2008, maybe. I forget now. Somebody told me somebody had kind of mentioned, after being at Beaubears by that point, by 7 or 8 years, you should write a book. You should write a book. And so, I decided, well, maybe I should write a book. And I really kind of saw it as an opportunity to sort of get all the information in one place, because the information was all there. It was just a matter of, looking in your father's book, and looking in, Esther Clark Wright's book, and looking in, kind of pulling. But,
that's a time-consuming thing, and especially when you sometimes don't know where to look. So if you don't know where to look, how do you know to look there in the first place?
Yeah.
That's the hard thing with that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so, by 2010, I had something that was workable, and I kind of shopped it around to the board of directors, and they didn't have any, major complaints. And Wendy thought it was a good idea, and she was great. She got the money to publish it with the help of the credit union, and Membership Landings, I believe, was also involved in that, and we launched it in 2010. And the great thing about that book is that it prompted so many other stories. People that said, "Oh, you should have written about this." You know
right,
what I mean?
Right.
So since that time, I've been kind of sitting and revising.
Are you going to do a second edition or third edition?
I certainly hope so. Because there's been so much information that we've gained since 2010, and I think that that really deserves to be. The book deserves to be revised and put out with all that new info.
That's one thing what I found about history is history never stands still.
Absolutely not.
It's only your perspective, your interpretation of it that is you have to draw a sand in the line sometime to say either this is a start or finish or whatever, but there has to be a line so that don't drive yourself crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wait 3 months, 3 years, or whatever, and go to more sources, your knowledge after you go to more sources is so much. It enhances so much what you did originally.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the next step. But there's always a next step.
Absolutely.
There's always history that we don't know about simply because it hasn't been exposed to yourself or anybody else. It's an interesting field.
It most certainly is.
So right now, what is your role and where are you doing it and who are you doing it with?
So right now I'm still sort of working for Go Bears. They're administering this project that I'm working on now. So in 2021, the end of that season, I stepped away as the executive director and Nikki took over. And I started managing a project with the Miramichi Historical Linkages project, I guess, which is all about trying to find connections through history. Miramichi, as you know, has such a rich history and reaches out so far, but we wanted to kind of look and see, okay, well, where does it reach to? I mean, we hear that so often, and we hear, maybe certain places, but where do those connections go? And also in the process, we've also tried to kind of connect Miramichi to itself, because I think often, we hear about, connections through a certain cultural vein.
Yeah.
Well, when we realize that, okay, well, yeah, sure, maybe the Scottish and Irish settlers that I'm speaking about or that I'm researching had connections to this place, but then my colleagues who are looking at it from the Acadian perspective or from the Indigenous perspective can also say, well, we also have connections there too, or and that just makes that connection all that much more rich.
It's true. It's absolutely true. When you look at everything's connected to everything, one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And your research, and how is it done? Who's it with? Is it with the archives in Fredericton, or is it with local people, or how does it work?
So we've done I guess a little bit of both. We've gone to the archives, but a lot of what we've done is through conversations like this. Sitting down with people and kind of hearing their stories. And when I ask them about what are some of those lesser known stories from our past, what are some when you hear about how is Miramichi connected to other places, what do you think? And you get a lot of interesting stories, a lot of interesting answers to that. And again, finding all kinds of things that I had no idea about. I always go back to in the fall of 2021, we found that little newspaper article that talked about 2 Egyptian rings that we found in Burke Church. They were 3,100 years old.
How did that happen?
Exactly.
Right?
So they were found in a button box by 2 ladies.
You can imagine how it is they came to get there, why they're there, how long they've been there. It's just the imagination. If you look at it with your mind and say, okay, well, you have to base it on how long has that place been there, how long has that house been there, how long has that family been there. But this could have been passed along for how many generations of people?
Sure.
And that's the great thing about history is, you're never going to reach the point where you know everything. You're never going to get there. But the journey is a lot of fun if you have an open mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more you learn, the more you want to know, right? So I mean,
it's a bad addiction. It's a terrible addiction.
Safer than some, though, John.
Yeah. So how do you present your material to the community now or in the future?
So I think, big picture, we're looking at doing some sort of, I guess, kind of public commemoration in the next, year or so. We're hopeful that we're probably going to narrow our focus when we are narrowing our focus down to a few places right now. But I think we're also trying to kind of look at some of the areas that we're not focusing on and try to utilize those. We're doing a linkage podcast as well, talking to different people that way. We're also, we've been approached by the high schools then we work a little more closely with them. And we're working now with the heritage fairs as well to kind of get some young people engaged that way if they're so inclined.
It's important.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe kind of telling some of those stories that we don't have a chance to tell, kind of in the big sense. But of course, like I say, I mean, I would not be surprised at all if there isn't books and other things that come out of this just from our own personal interests because we found this story and we found it interesting. Whether it's something that we go forward with as a project team, it might be something that we go forward with as individual historians.
So, how many are on your team, and who's coming up with the cash to get it done, to pay your salaries and whatever else is needed?
So right now there's a research team of 4 members. Myself, who's the project manager and also kind of focuses on research with regard to the Irish and Scottish settler communities. And Tasha Smith, who is our Indigenous Heritage and Culture researcher. Alison Paradis, who looks at the Acadian communities, and Sarah Ward, who kind of advises us due to her 30 years of research experience that she brings to the table. And like I say, so yeah, it's a good team.
Did the province approach you? Is that where the money's coming from, or how did you get involved?
We approached them
Okay.
with this idea, and I think it's something that, and we certainly hope it's something that can be replicated in other parts of the province. If because I would love to sit down with my counterpart in Moncton or St. John or Bathurst or wherever and say, okay, well, this is how we did it here, and provide logistical support to help them do it there.
So
conceivably, who knows?
In a way, you're probably creating a template for how to do or what to do going forward for another community?
Maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
if it could be. I would certainly welcome that. I'd love to be able to sit down with a research team from another part of the province and say, okay, well now how do your research and our research connect New Brunswick into somewhere else? In many different ways. Because again, I think in a time, especially where we're much more conscious about the environment and maybe I think travel is going to mean something. It's got to mean something to people more and more. If I'm traveling from here to there, well, there has to be something that draws me. And if I can say, well, I'm going there because 100 years ago,
This is a connection.
There's a connection there, between us. And of course, like I say, not only, and how can we use that connection from 100 years ago to inform our connection today? Because I think we're still connected in many ways. Time and circumstance might have changed, but we're still facing, when I'm talking to, lumber towns, in Minnesota, for instance, just as an example, like they're probably facing a lot of the same things that we face here.
Oh yeah,
because the industry being what it is, and
well, pulp and paper is kind of
exactly. So
dropped into the barrel there.
How are they dealing with that? And how are we dealing with it? And we had a great conversation a few weeks ago with a lady from New Zealand who sent us some materials there about how they're kind of dealing with climate change and heritage and culture, and and kind of meshing those things together. And I think that's really inspiring. And that, where can we do the same thing here? Can we kind of bring in the call for conservation up, but with the cultural understanding and the traditional knowledge that underpins it?
I did a little paper last year about how the First Nations adapted to environmental changes, and it's been like almost a year probably since I did it. I have to look it up, but that's what I hope we can do is educate the community with regards to, okay, so these are the challenges now. How are we going to adapt to those challenges going forward, and how can we make a better, happier, more just society than what it was in the past?
Absolutely.
That's what I hope we can do, and educate the younger people, because when we were 12 or 15 or whatnot, we didn't have the knowledge we have now.
No,
and
for sure.
The only way people get knowledge is if you pass it on to them. Otherwise, they're never going to know. I mean, now most kids can run a smartphone, whereas 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a personal computer in the home was almost non-existent. So the advance into electronics, for good or for worse, it's come and really it's taken a real hold in society. But you know, watching dinosaurs skip through the puddles in the cartoon is really not going to make you any smarter, right? So how can we do it in a way that is, you know, the mind is open to that information, and the information is worth learning. And a lot of knowledge we have, Miramichi, of course, with our long history, can we dig out a little further and take it a little further and educate the society? That's what I want to try and do. You know, I want to try and talk to people that have done things that are mundane, normal, and those who have done things that are ordinary, plus those people that have done extraordinary things. And how did you do that? And why did you do that? And that kind of stuff to educate people to what we can do as a community, because we really are a community of Miramichiers, and that's what the great thing about the Miramichi is. We can identify with each other. If we go back and say, you know, 3 or 4 generations, almost everybody knew everybody in a certain community.
Sure.
Right? And so I'd like to bring back kind of a community sense of what Miramichi is. That's what my goal is to, right?
Well, I applaud you for all the work that you're doing. Like I say, John, I mean, this is a great series. And, you know, I look forward to seeing the future episodes. And, yeah, because again, I mean, I think also having these voices out there is really important and accessible to people because, you know, again, you never know who's listening to this. You never know who might be engaged, you know, by this. And you never know, you know, who in 10 years and 15 years, you know what I mean, is going to look back. That's right. You know, that's it.
And, you know, if we don't record the knowledge we have now and present it to our community, how are we going to advance other than a stupid app on our phone that's dinosaurs skipping through puddles? I mean, there's no point in that. It's a waste of time. So, but every child over the age of 10 or 12 probably has a smartphone. And is it making them any smarter, or is it just doing what we used to call in the 60s a boob tube, television? It's just, you know, information on the screen, but it's not really making you think any better than you did yesterday.
No, for sure. I think, you know, and again, I think, you know, I was lucky in this. There were people that encouraged me not just to kind of consume, but to create.
Yes.
Right? You know,
Yes.
and I mean,
Yes.
there's certainly a value in consumption, but I think overconsumption, as you say, I mean, you know, can really kind of stunt and that sort of thing. And I think it can make you, you know, feel like, okay, well, I have nothing to contribute to compare with, you know, this dinosaur hopping through a puddle.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I can't do that, but you can do something.
That's
and I
right.
mean, you know, I think, I think people, like I say, to be encouraged to kind of do the kind of things that you're doing, and also, you know, and do their own slant on it, right? To take the initiative and say
anything that comes out of what I do is 1% or 1% of me, but the real value is, and my father knew that, the real value is what do you know? What was your experiences? And how did it develop? So we saw the value in people. We saw the value of people outside himself. And the minute, I don't know everything, but somebody does. So let's go and try and get that knowledge from the community at large. That's where the value is.
absolutely.
Right. So, I guess we'll wrap it up. And this is Dr. McCarthy. And it's been a great pleasure, and I've known Shawn for a little bit now, and we've always enjoyed a good laugh, and we try to keep things on the lighter side of life as much as we can, because you know, it bounces out. But he's got a great background, and now you know what it takes to get a PhD in history. Okay, right?
Yeah, you know, that's it. Somebody, I remember I was working one time, or I was at McDonald Farm, and this was after my PhD was over, or maybe it was toward the end of it, but whatever.
Yeah.
And somebody asked me there if I had my grade 12. And
What?
Yeah. And I said, yep, and I've got another 14 years on top of that.
What was the response? Other than Another 14 years and up.
Exactly, that's it. You know, yeah.
Whoa.
So I'm either that's it. I'm either very, very smart or very, very dumb, and I know what I would choose.
Yeah, well, I know what I would choose too. So, and I want to thank you for your time. And I always enjoy time with you, and I don't see you much anymore. And maybe that'll change, maybe they won't. I don't know. But I want to thank you for your time and your contribution to the community at large to try and make us smarter and a better community going forward. And isn't that worth doing for all of us, right?
I certainly think so, but like I say, I appreciate your kind words, John. You're always very flattering.
No, I'm more honest than I am flattering.
Well, I don't know. I mean, to me, you know what I mean. I think that's I don't know that I deserve all those accolades, but I appreciate them very much, and I want to thank you for having me on, and and having such interest in in.
When you get the Order of Canada, I'll be there.
Okay.
I'll tell you. You friggin' deserve it. You deserve it.
Well,
take that piece of paper. Maybe it's a medal. I don't know. I don't expect to see it for myself.
If I ever get it and you're there to tell me you told you so, I'll show you mine. But anyway, but like I say, I really, like I say, I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I appreciate, like I say, the invitation. It's always nice to talk to you, as you say, and I echo your hope that we can see a little bit more of one another in the
I like that.
in the months and years ahead.
You need a good circus clown. I'm your man.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Shawn.
No trouble. Thank you, John.